Pluto, the path to soul transformation. And this is a phoenix rising from the ashes. That is a very classic Pluto symbolism because that soul transformation that takes place, it's also like a caterpillar that makes its cocoon and then dissolves to goo and then reforms as a butterfly and then comes out of the cocoon and lives a second life as a butterfly. The Pluto placement is a lot like that. Like once the butterfly exists, there is no more caterpillar. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And the Pluto transformation that we're here to make is a lot like that, where we completely leave our old self behind and we become something completely new. So we're going to get into a little bit more about all the hell connotations, but as a result of an intentional descent into hell, you will be happier in the future because you rooted out the underlying causes of unhappiness and dysfunction in your life. So you think about like, if you've ever been to therapy, if you've ever like seen a coach or a mentor of some kind, like there probably were some really uncomfortable conversations as a part of that where you're not doing it for fun. This is not fun work and it's not exciting and joyful and filled with happiness, but it's necessary. So this is where we get into facing some potentially hard truths about ourselves and the world, but it's ultimately for our highest good. So this is the last of the generational planets. It rules Scorpio in the 8th house. It spends 9 to 30 years per sign. And like the other two, it retrogrades once a year and about 6 months at a time. So that means about half of us have Pluto retrograde in our natal chart. And again, kind of like Neptune, I think that just is kind of translating to like you are going to make this soul transformation in this life. You've like doubled down. And you've promised to yourself. And that retrograde Pluto is just going to turn up the volume on whatever transformation you intended. Pluto return every 249 years. So that means if you're fortunate to live long enough, you probably will experience a square. 250 divided by 4 is whatever that is. So that's the age that you would go through a Pluto square Pluto. And again, that's just a pressure point on doing that soul level transformation that your soul intended. So Pluto is also called the Lord of the underworld or the God of hell. And you think about like how many people, if they were asked, would you rather go to heaven or hell? How many people say hell? Like none, maybe. So that's kind of the point of Pluto is it's probably not something you're going to choose to face all by yourself just for fun. Probably something manifests in your life where there's no choice. There's no way around it. It is what it is. Like either the only way through hell is just to keep on going, just go forward, and eventually you reach the end of it. It's our unconscious mind. So it's the things that not only that we've buried in this life, but probably we've brought in from past lives that have been something that we've avoided and truths that we haven't dealt with in our past lives. And now that's represented in our Scorpio placement in this life. Depending on who you listen to amongst evolutionary astrologers, some people say Pluto is the soul. Some people say Pluto is the soul's wound. Even the people who say it's only the soul agree that every soul is wounded. So it's in that territory of basically it is the reason for your incarnation. That caterpillar to butterfly transformation is kind of the center point of what transformation your soul came here to make in this lifetime. And the way I understand it is kind of the rest of the natal chart is playing support and is filling in the details more of what that transformation is bound to look like. It does involve facing harsh truths and realities. You got to think if something was pleasant, you wouldn't have buried it to begin with. So the very fact that you've rejected it in the past probably means there's going to be discomfort in facing whatever that is as it comes back up. But much like the therapy example, as you bring those things back to the surface and you've practiced coping skills and you have more tools than you had back when you originally stuffed it. You bring that back forward and you respond from where you are now. And through that loving of yourself and re-accepting that piece of yourself, there's more wholeness, there's more self-love, there's that healing and regeneration that comes from, like, not only accepting that, but just the effect of no longer holding yourself back, no longer spending the energy to keep that stuffed down into your unconscious mind. It does have connection to the lunar nodes. So, like, the Pluto placement is the transformation your soul came here to make. And then the lunar nodes can tell you more about kind of the south node is the caterpillar end and the north node is the butterfly end, and what exactly is that specific transformation that you're wanting to make. Both Pluto and the north node, south node can help fill in that picture. So when we're healing in the Pluto realm, it's going to be a phoenix type transformation. So again, you got to wonder how many people would willingly light themselves on fire so that they would burn to ash, so that maybe a phoenix can rise from those ashes. It takes a lot of faith to step into this place and to trust that doing this work will yield positive outcomes, even though the short term might be very painful or uncomfortable. And I definitely recommend seeking support if you're wanting to more consciously step into this space, either through an astrologer who can talk with you about it, or a therapist, or whatever the right fit for you might be. Because you've buried that stuff in the past for a reason. And when it starts coming back up, it's going to bring a lot of shit with it. So that's something to have healthy respect for. Those emotions can be messy and complicated and a lot to sort through. So help can definitely make a big difference. Through doing that work, we gain a deeper discernment of who we are and who we want to be. You think about, like, the caterpillar to the butterfly, we gain better discernment of why we're leaving behind what we're leaving behind and why we're moving towards what we're moving towards. And in understanding that progression can also help with alleviating any of the discomfort that comes up when we're talking about that transformation. A lot of times, what's at the root of the things that we stuffed are our anger, fear, and it doesn't say it on here, but disempowerment. When we feel powerless, when we feel like a victim, when we feel like someone's taking advantage of us, or we're afraid that someone's going to reject us or whatever, those are the kinds of things that we just try to push it away as soon as we possibly can. And those are the things that fester and grow in our unconscious mind the longer we leave them sit there. So a lot of times when you are pulling these things back up from your unconscious, it means facing your worst fears and, like, probably having some of them come true to a certain extent, depending on how willing you're walking into that process. But again, the outcome of doing this work, like walking through hell to get to the other side, is you find true strength. You realize that strength has nothing to do with our physical body. It has nothing to do with the physical world. It is purely emotional. Our ability to be emotionally resilient is how I would define true strength. We find our inner source of power. So often what we're afraid of is losing things that matter to us. And sometimes we have to lose those things to be shown that this is not it. Either it's not as scary as you thought it was, or it was just as bad as you thought it was, and you survived. Turns out you can survive without that thing that you thought you needed. So all of those things help connect us with our inner power and let us stand in that inner power and live from a place of true self-empowerment, which kind of gives us the opening to self-actualize, to be who we were born to be. Like, you think about going back to Uranus, it wants us to be our individual self. And Pluto is like everything that's standing in the way, every fear we've ever had about losing something or whatever. So reckoning all of that, reconciling all of that, eventually we get to a place of emotional security. And that is the birthplace of true power, true strength. It's a beautiful place to live, where we know for certain that our power comes from us being connected to our soul and nowhere else. And at that point, life in general, the physical world, seems a whole lot less scary. So that's the end of Pluto. Any questions before we cover Chiron? That's the last one, and then we'll spend some time doing some placements. Very good.
I just want to say I appreciate your explanation. It's very empowering versus some people, oh, this is the most feared placement or whatever. I think you mentioned it. Are you evolution astrologer?
I've been studying that more lately, following a few evolutionary astrologers. I am not formally trained at all. I have like a Google degree in astrology. So I appreciate that you like my explanation. That means a lot to me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I like the evolutionary perspective, though, that everything serves its purpose. Every single piece of it represents a different side to our story. And our work as a soul in this physical life is to bring them all together and to stand here as who we came to be. We put a lot of effort into manifesting this physical form. So all of them play their part in letting us eventually get to that place where we can be our true self.
Yeah, just how you work with it.
Thank you. Yeah. Tammy probably knows. She's had several readings with me. I just, self-empowerment is like my passion. Like for myself, because I've dealt with the holding myself back in that area and have gotten to a place where I can feel how delicious it is to let myself be free. And at this point, my passion is helping other people to let themselves be free, because nobody else can set us free from the cage that we put ourselves in. And I know that from personal experience. And I forget where I heard this. It was an astrology thing. No, it was a human design thing. But basically, it was like you can't let yourself out of prison until you know you're in prison. So regardless of where you are along the path of like being your authentic self out loud in your life full force, there's so many stages along the way of even becoming aware, becoming conscious that this is something that you want. You want to break free of the limitations you're placing on yourself. To even have that desire is a huge step forward in allowing yourself to have that in your life. So yeah, wherever you are on that path, I respect it.